says another plot against him has been foiled. Traoré has repeatedly claimed to be the target of sinister plots and assassination attempts. The latest one is from the 9th of June.
119 trained men, one target, a plan to storm the palace, assassinate Captain Ibrahim Traoré, and throw Burkina Faso into chaos. But this wasn't just a power grab. It smelled of foreign hands, insurgent links, and betrayal from within. So who orchestrated it? Why was Traoré marked for elimination? And how deep does this conspiracy go? Let's find out. When security forces intercepted strange communications in early April 2025, they didn't yet know they were stumbling into the heart of an assassination plot. What began as a small anomaly, chatter between low-ranking officers and contacts across the border, soon revealed a hidden network, a quiet mutiny fermenting inside the very institutions meant to protect the state. And at the center of it all was one terrifying goal: kill Captain Ibrahim Traoré and dismantle everything his regime had built. This wasn't a random flare-up of unrest. It was a calculated operation, months in the making. Investigators discovered that 119 individuals were directly involved, some active-duty soldiers, others retired officers, and several with ties to foreign networks. What connected them all was access to weapons, bases, intelligence briefings, and in some cases to the president's daily movements. The conspiracy was stitched together with chilling precision: the timing, the routes, the strike teams, the fallback plans. This wasn't a coup in theory, it was a coup in the execution phase, and it came within inches of success. But what made this plot truly terrifying wasn't just the number of conspirators, it was their profile. Some of the arrested operatives had been stationed near the presidential complex. A few had served directly under officers loyal to Traoré. Others had been flagged previously for disciplinary issues but were never considered part of an organized movement. Most chilling, however, were the whispers that elements from outside Burkina Faso were helping to coordinate and fund the effort. Initial reports revealed that encrypted messaging apps and burner phones were used to coordinate movements. One message, later leaked to Burkinabe intelligence, outlined a precise window: a moment during Traoré's scheduled inspection of a newly fortified northern base. The plan was to strike during his return, catch him off guard, and create a power vacuum that would allow a pre-selected group of interim leaders to seize key government buildings and broadcast an emergency transition. These weren't rebels in the bush, they were men in uniform, walking the same hallways, eating in the same mess halls, and they weren't working alone. Intelligence pointed to at least two alarming connections. One, to radicalized militias operating near the tri-border area, and two, to foreign operatives suspected to be coordinating from inside neighboring Ivory Coast. Surveillance logs indicated unregistered cross-border vehicle movement just days before the operation was supposed to launch. The plan was far-reaching: storm Ouagadougou, paralyze the capital, and let chaos carry the coup forward. Once the dust settled, a new government would be announced, reportedly with promises of stability, openness, and international cooperation. It sounded like a press release drafted before the blood had even dried. What's especially notable is the timing. April 2025 came at a moment when Captain Traoré's influence was expanding rapidly, both regionally and ideologically. His speeches were gaining traction across Africa. The Alliance of Sahel States (AES) had just finalized several new military agreements. Burkina Faso was increasing coordination with Mali and Niger. Meanwhile, foreign interests, especially those losing their military foothold in West Africa, were watching with growing anxiety. So the question becomes, was this a coup for local power or a foreign intervention by proxy? That remains officially unconfirmed, but investigators found suspicious currency exchanges, foreign SIM cards, and references to rendezvous points labeled in French intelligence shorthand. Traoré's team now believes the goal wasn't just to remove a president, it was to erase a movement. And had it not been for a junior officer who flagged unusual nighttime activity at a rural checkpoint, this plot may have unfolded as planned. One routine report triggered a rapid escalation: counterintelligence, arrests, interrogation, and ultimately, a full map of the plot's architecture. Within 72 hours, the core of the conspiracy had been exposed. The threat was neutralized, but the message was clear. Traoré is not just a man under attack, he is an idea under siege. And if the idea is being targeted so violently, the next logical question is, who benefits if that idea dies? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. If the plan to eliminate Captain Ibrahim Traoré was terrifying in its scale, the identities and intentions of those behind it are even more chilling. Because this wasn't just about seizing power, it was about removing a threat to the existing global order. The deeper investigators dug into the conspiracy, the more it became clear. This wasn't simply treason. It was a strategic disruption, designed to halt a geopolitical shift that was gaining momentum under Traoré's leadership. The names emerging from intelligence reports weren't random. Several conspirators had long been viewed as quietly disillusioned by Burkina Faso's current direction, particularly its rejection of Western influence and its embrace of new alliances. At the core of the web sat Bahari Abdrahman, a decorated officer known for his sharp mind, international training, and formerly loyal public image. But behind the facade, investigators found digital trails, hidden financial transfers, travel records to unsanctioned meetings, and coded messages suggesting coordination with actors outside Burkina Faso's borders. This is where the story begins to shift, not from coup to conspiracy, but from insurgency to interference. Multiple intelligence sources speaking under anonymity confirmed that certain plotters maintained contacts across the border in Ivory Coast, a nation with long-standing economic and security relationships with France. These contacts weren't just political, they were logistical. Surveillance picked up encrypted transmissions routed through Ivorian telecom hubs, and some of the captured conspirators admitted under interrogation that their orders and updates came from operatives based outside of Burkina Faso's jurisdiction. What were foreign agents doing in this mess? Let's rewind for context. Since 2022, when Captain Traoré overthrew the previous administration, Burkina Faso has undergone a seismic shift. He expelled French troops, canceled long-standing military deals with the West, and pivoted toward Pan-African alliances, particularly with Mali, Niger, and even Russia. Under his leadership, the newly formed alliance of Sahel states AES has grown not just in strength but in ideology. It represents something the West finds hard to contain: a bloc of former colonies charting an independent path without dependency on Paris, Washington, or Brussels. And that is exactly why he became a threat worth eliminating. The timing of the assassination plot wasn't a coincidence. Just weeks prior, Traoré had solidified Burkina Faso's participation in a series of regional defense pacts. His military cooperation with Russia had expanded, and AES leaders had begun working on a common currency and joint military drills, a direct challenge to both Western economic leverage and military presence in West Africa. For outside powers used to exerting influence through soft occupation, military bases, NGOs, mining contracts, this was a clear red line being crossed. Suddenly, Burkina Faso was no longer a client state. It was a symbol of resistance. And symbols are dangerous, especially when they start catching on. That's when the whispers began. Not in the media, but in back rooms and secure channels. Western embassies issued vague travel advisories. Foreign analysts quietly warned of instability risks. French military pundits speculated on leadership gaps and concerns over governance. Then came the financial pressure. Development aid withheld, investment projects quietly frozen. Burkina Faso was being diplomatically strangled, and yet it didn't blink. So what happens when pressure fails? You escalate. You find insiders. You exploit weaknesses. You co-opt the ambitious. You turn a few disillusioned men into instruments of regime change. The aim wasn't just to kill Traoré. It was to destroy a model, to send a message to every African nation even thinking of leaving the Western orbit. This is what happens when you say no. And the evidence supporting foreign involvement, while carefully buried under layers of diplomatic deniability, is growing harder to ignore. Investigators recovered unmarked weapons, non-Burkinabe currency, and communication software traceable to NATO-funded networks. Even more damning was a dossier containing outlines for a post-Traoré stabilization roadmap. A document so polished it was almost certainly pre-written by someone waiting for the right moment. The coup was planned to be clean, fast, and decisive. But when that failed, it exposed something much bigger, a war being fought in the shadows, where bullets are just one of many tools, and leaders like Traoré are seen as obstacles to a different kind of empire. Which leads us to the next twist. This conspiracy wasn't just external. The most dangerous attack came from within. And to pull it off, the plotters didn't rely on brute force. They used something far more insidious. So, how do you break a revolution from the inside without even firing a shot? If the first wave of the plot to kill Captain Ibrahim Traoré was military, and the second geopolitical, the third was psychological, and perhaps the most dangerous of all. Because in this shadow war, the conspirators didn't just aim to pierce flesh or topple institutions. They sought to poison trust itself. Before a single bullet could be fired or a convoy could roll toward the presidential palace, the operation's architects deployed something subtler. A full-scale disinformation campaign targeting Burkina Faso's military, media, and political infrastructure. The goal was simple but devastating. Divide the loyalists, confuse the chain of command, and erode faith in Traoré's leadership from within. It started with conflicting military orders. Reports later confirmed that multiple officers received contradictory directives in the days leading up to the foiled coup attempt. Some were told to stand down from routine patrols. Others were ordered to change base locations without explanation. Communication channels became clogged with urgent but unclear messages. Many signed off by what appeared to be legitimate command names, except that those names had not issued the orders. Someone, or something, was ghosting Burkina Faso's command structure, faking military communications to generate friction, hesitation, and ultimately paralysis. But that was just the first layer. The next wave of sabotage came through false briefings and fake intel. Junior officers were told that a reshuffle of command was imminent, and that Traoré no longer trusted them. Loyal commanders were quietly warned that their men were plotting against them. Field leaders were shown doctored reports suggesting their units were infiltrated. The message was never said directly, but it was whispered everywhere. You're on your own. Be careful who you trust. And in war, nothing is more dangerous than doubt. It was a masterclass in internal destabilization. When soldiers begin to suspect their comrades, when generals start questioning their orders, when rumor carries more weight than reality, that's when the system begins to unravel. The conspirators weren't trying to attack the government in one grand strike. They were trying to soften it like fruit left in the sun. Slowly, quietly, from the inside out. But this wasn't just happening in barracks and command rooms. It spilled into the civilian world too, through social media, anonymous blogs, and encrypted messaging platforms. Seemingly spontaneous rumors began to spread. Traoré had fled the country. The military was divided. Russia had withdrawn support. The AES alliance was collapsing. None of it was true. But in moments of national uncertainty, perception becomes reality. And the enemy knows this. Cyber units traced dozens of these false narratives to IP addresses outside Burkina Faso, routed through VPNs and untraceable digital identities. Some posts appeared to be AI-generated, written in local dialects, tailored to specific regional fears. One widely shared message, for instance, claimed that Traoré has sold the North to Russian mercenaries, a blatant lie, but one that struck deep in communities already traumatized by conflict and foreign exploitation. This campaign of confusion wasn't designed to convince everyone. It was designed to convince just enough to make soldiers hesitate, enough to make civilians panic, enough to make one bodyguard lower his weapon at the wrong moment. In that hesitation, the conspirators believed a window would open, just wide enough for the strike to succeed. And it almost worked. Insiders later confirmed that, in the critical hours before the conspiracy was dismantled, loyalist commanders were on the verge of issuing contradictory commands, unsure who was betraying whom. In some cases, units refused to move without verbal confirmation from Traoré himself. The command network had been digitally and psychologically paralyzed. This was the invisible coup. No tanks, no gunfire, no grand broadcast, just whispers, falsehoods, digital ghosts, and the slow breakdown of cohesion. And if it hadn't been discovered in time, Burkina Faso might have awakened to find its president gone, its army scattered, and its sovereignty handed back to foreign benefactors with clean hands. But Traoré's government didn't fall. It held, barely. And in the aftermath, as the plotters were arrested and the rumors were extinguished, one realization emerged. The attack wasn't just on Traoré's life. It was on Burkina Faso's mind. And that's why the response couldn't be silent. It had to be as loud and deliberate as the threat was subtle. So, how did Traoré respond to this unseen war? What did he change? And is he preparing for the next one? The moment the plot was crushed, the next battle began. Not a battle of bullets, but of narratives, alliances, and survival. Captain Ibrahim Traoré understood one truth more clearly than ever. When the attack is psychological, the counterattack must be ideological. And so, his response wasn't just about cleaning up conspirators. It was about fortifying the soul of the revolution, sending a clear signal to enemies both seen and unseen that Burkina Faso would not be broken from within. The first move was swift and brutal, a deep purge within the military. Traoré's security team launched an internal audit of communications, reviewed past officer movements, and began cross-examining duty rosters to find sympathizers who hadn't yet acted. Those who couldn't explain inconsistencies in their deployments were reassigned, detained, or discharged. It wasn't about punishing dissent. It was about eliminating instability. Any hint of disloyalty, hesitation, or compromise became grounds for removal. Loyalty, in Traoré's words, was no longer optional. It is structural. But it didn't stop at ranks and rifles. Traoré recognized that this war had entered the narrative domain, and so he responded with a public campaign that redefined the attempted coup not as a mere internal betrayal, but as a continuation of Africa's anti-colonial struggle. Within hours of the public announcement that the plot had been foiled, Traoré addressed the nation, not behind a podium, but standing among soldiers in camouflage, without notes, without handlers. His message was clear. They tried to kill me because they couldn't control me. The room erupted in cheers, but the deeper purpose was strategic. He was reframing the assassination attempt into a moral victory, casting himself as a target not because of weakness, but because of an unshakable principle. This framing had two effects. It galvanized domestic support, especially among young Burkinabés who already viewed Traoré as a modern Sankara, and it cornered foreign actors, forcing them to either deny involvement or risk being seen as colonial meddlers. It was a masterstroke, because even those who remained skeptical of Traoré's rule had no desire to see their sovereignty hijacked by outside forces. Then came the strategic expansions. Rather than retreat into isolation, Traoré intensified regional cooperation. Within weeks, Burkina Faso initiated emergency military dialogues with Mali and Niger, reinforcing the AES bloc not just as a symbolic alliance but a real military compact. Joint patrol zones were extended, intelligence sharing protocols were updated, and plans were accelerated for a centralized AES command center, which would act as both a deterrent and a response mechanism against future hybrid attacks. Critics abroad accused him of becoming paranoid. Supporters said he was being realistic. But to Traoré, the message was simple. If they almost destroyed us by infiltrating one government, we must survive by becoming one force. The AES wasn't just a diplomatic invention anymore. It was now a survival strategy. And Traoré didn't stop with defense. He began actively retooling Burkina Faso's information architecture. New cybersecurity units were commissioned to monitor disinformation. A government media task force was deployed to address fake news in real time, complete with verified fact-checking and public briefings. Social media war rooms were created, staffed with multilingual youth trained to detect and counter foreign-influenced digital campaigns. The battlefield had gone digital, and so Traoré took the war online. Yet perhaps the boldest move came not in a policy change, but a cultural signal. In a televised ceremony weeks later, Traoré presided over the unveiling of a new national monument, a towering statue not of himself, but of three faceless soldiers standing back to back, rifles in hand, guarding a flame. Its name? La Garde de la Nation, the Nation's Guard. Traoré used the moment to deliver a line that now echoes across social media in West Africa. They will try again. But we are no longer defending one man. We are defending an idea, and ideas don't bleed. By turning a moment of near collapse into a symbol of rebirth, Traoré shifted the public focus from fear to resilience. His response wasn't only about crushing conspirators, it was about making any future conspirator question whether they could truly kill what he represented. Do you think Traoré won? Can any attack on him become successful? Let us know in the comment section. Is he truly a leader Africa has never had? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.